rather than just having a muffled. The acoustics in here obviously much better when there's a whole rack of clothes than here at the moment. So yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It's great to see so many different people here. We've got town camp residents, we've got NT government officials, we've got lots of students, interested public, and a whole range of people who are quite curious about what's been happening in the last couple of weeks. This is the fourth year of this project, and I'm just so impressed by the quality of work that's been done really in the last few days, but certainly over the last couple of weeks. It seems to be, just the quality seems to lift every single year. It just kind of goes that extra step, and the students should be really commended for that. So welcome everyone to the fourth year of what we call Essential Infrastructures. It's a partnership between Tunga Design and the University of Newcastle School of Architecture and the Built Environment. And it's a collaborative effort that tries to bring together the talents of emerging architects with the visions of town camp residents to try to create better places that we all want. And of course, it's in this place, in Mparntwe, Alice Springs, that this relationship begins to unfold and come together. And it's here where, of course, we have to pay our respects to the Central Aranda people and their elders past, present, and future. There's an exhibition, I don't know if you've had a chance to see, down at Araluen. It just opened last week. It's a ceramicist called Mel Robson, and her work is all about mapping and place. And I think the idea of mapping is certainly something you will see in today's exhibition. And there's a quote at Mel Robson's show by a woman called Sarah Willard Gray, who says this, and just bear with me for a moment. Mapping, she says, is a shared form of knowledge, and therefore provides a common ground between different human cultures, a means by which each can communicate to the other something about their relationship to a certain place. So it's this idea of mapping, I think, as shared knowledge that seems to capture what this work and why it's so salient for us. Yes, it's about architecture and it's about community aspirations, but it's also, I think, perhaps something more lasting, something that's certainly elusive. You might call it a kind of practice of reconciliation. Perhaps an opportunity to see the eyes of the world through others. This last fortnight's certainly been a very rich experience, and there are a lot of people to thank, so I just want to run through a few at the moment. I want to thank Vanessa Sitzler and the residents of Carnta Camp, who I think some came through earlier and may come back. Rosemary Rabunja and the residents of Andapa, Robert Hussein, who's here today, and the Ilperinia residents, and Will Foster and the fellows from Nuenda Trucking Yards. They've all given a huge amount of time over these last 2 weeks to the students, patiently working with them in what I think is a real collaborative, a genuinely collaborative way. On a range of proposals that I hope will become reality. This isn't just fantasy architecture. These are projects that have a basis in reality, and they're meant to drive forward. So Tunga Design, Tunga Council uses this to kind of push, to advocate for this stuff, to look for funding, and to make some of these things come alive. And we've had some successes over the last few years in getting work that the students and town campers have done in the past funded to upgrade community centers at a number of different locations. So it's quite a good sort of successful way of initiating work and seeing it realized. We need to thank also Michael Clark, who I don't think is here yet, but he was absolutely pivotal in helping to organize this year's elective. He's got boundless energy, and critical for bringing it all together. Wanted to thank also the community center coordinators, Lauren Kenworthy, who's here, and Olivia Wells, who certainly helped to foster the conversations that were required to make some of this happen. Meg Kellum, who's here as well. I saw Meg somewhere earlier, who opened our eyes to a very provocative view of this place. To Mike Gillum, who again opened the gates of Healy Crescent this year and showed us that the best places are created over time. Thanks also to Nicole Walsh and the Yiperinia Shopping Center for welcoming this very unusual activity into this space. I think 2 weeks ago it was the merchandise outlet for the Fink Desert Race, so it sort of undergoes a few incarnations over time. I want to especially thank Chris Tucker, who's standing in the back there, and Chris will have a bit more to say later on. He's the head of school, so he's brought these students up here and certainly helped to make this happen. And he's been with the project for the last 3 years, and his commitment to the endeavor is just astounding. Also want to thank Andrew Hannah-Davies, who's new this year. I saw Andrew somewhere in the crowd. There he is in the back. He's acted both as a mentor to the students and also as an enthusiastic participant in one of the projects. And lastly, David Havercroft, who said a few words at the start, and Stephen Sains, my colleagues at Tunga Design, who Stephen unfortunately can't be here. They've put in tremendous effort, especially David, lots of long hours, a lot of physical effort to make this happen and to create really, I think, what is an exceptional and very unusual experience in Australia. And finally, the students. You've embraced this adventure with open eyes, listening ears, and good, warm souls. And I hope you'll continue to imagine architecture as something that can happen in the most unexpected places. So we're going to start with the work from Carnta Camp, and the students will say a few words about it, and then we'll just kind of open it up to a few comments and suggestions.
Okay. Thanks, Mahalia.
Okay, so this is Carnta Camp, and we, on our second day in Alice Springs, we came to this camp and we were enlightened on what was happening in this community. So this is the mapping that we did. This is north. We've got some, it's all 1 to 200 scale. We have some models showing what we might propose in the future.
So one of the main issues for the residents of this camp was the distance to public transport. It's just under 2 Ks walk to the nearest bus stop. So we looked into what we could do about that. So looking at the existing transport map, there is a bus stop that runs down the highway very near to the camp. It's Route 300 and 301. If they turned into the camps, it would only be a few minute drive, and it could service 2 camps. We looked into what the potential issues could be around getting a bus to come here. The buses, we found out they wouldn't be able to go into the camps, but there shouldn't be an issue with them servicing the periphery. So we proposed a bus stop here for the residents. What would happen next, I think, is that the Department of Housing is responsible for this road, so they would have to come to site to assess its suitability and to make any required upgrades. There shouldn't be really any major issues with getting a bus to come along this road. We've proposed a bus stop here. It's a shelter that actually sits within the boundary that provides a space for people to gather, but also just wait for the bus, while also partially blocking off this road. Another major issue for the residents was people speeding through the camp. They're coming around really fast and it's really dangerous. So making this street here narrow, we initially proposed blocking it off altogether, but it didn't quite fly. So narrowing it to one way means that we've got also speed bumps around that have to reduce speed a lot to get through here. So hopefully that will help with the safety issue of the speed.
The next thing that we sort of dived into and tried to solve problems around was the community centre. In Kante, one of the things about the community centre is that it became a place for women to come and gather and enjoy each other's company. And one of the biggest problems they faced there was people breaking in and burglaries and that sort of thing. So they expressed that concern, and we came up with the concept of a fence going around the broader context of the site, around the lot, and increasing security in terms of lighting and sensor lights that come on if people do break into the space. Something that we did do is there was an existing fence that ran this way, and the men's shed that we proposed didn't exist. It was sort of a vacant lot. So what we tried to do, we tried to answer the need for a men's space as well within the community centre space, so that two spaces together can be securely done and more efficiently as well. We wouldn't have to secure two spaces. It's the one space that sort of comes together. To keep them separate, we left that existing fence still there. We put in berms and vegetation additionally to reduce sight lines to the community centre, so they're private spaces for men, for women. And also it helps shelter against winter winds. So that chill sort of goes away from there. We also put a small play area near the community centre. While there is a larger one on site, we thought bubs from the age of 0 going to 3 like to be around their mums. Their mums are around the centre, have a closer eye on them, and that sort of thing. We put a wood fire oven back in there as well. Apparently the one that used to exist had broken down, and there used to be a part of the community that people used to come together to cook food and that sort of thing. So we reinstalled it and put some seating and a fireplace that's communal for men and women to come and enjoy that space particularly. But yeah.
So the men's shed, as Amy said, it's separate. So it's for men to gather, and when the big fence is locked, the men can still sit out on the street and watch what's happening, so it's still space. It's just a multi-purpose building without the back a toilet and a washing facility for anyone, and also a kitchen as well. So.
When we went to the town camp, they also expressed how they had a lot of street lights, but then most of them weren't working. So we have proposed that those get fixed, and as well as adding some additional lights close to the community center and along the main road. And also, as Chloe mentioned, that they mentioned how there were a lot of speeding cars around the camp. So we decided to add a bit more speed bumps, and as well as a pedestrian crossing across the community center, because a lot of kids play around that space. Also, with the playgrounds, there was the issue of cars driving across it, and that was unsafe for the kids. So they asked us to add a fence around the children's playground to make it more safe for them, and also to stop the cars as well. We added some concrete blocks that also served the purpose of seating, and we also did that also across the whole side, so in these spaces and on the southern side. So there were also some fencing that wasn't working anymore, like people were taking them down and moving their cars around the space. So we decided to also propose that gets fixed, across, on the reserve area, and also added a fence around the southern boundary.
So also on this, when we went to site, the community expressed areas of sports facilities. So perhaps in the future AFL oval or a full-size basketball court or a smaller playing space. These spaces bring the community together, perhaps.
There's also a BMX track here that the camp has already in place a BMX program where they take the kids somewhere off-site to learn how to ride BMX. So we've put in, this was just a dirt road, so now it can be fenced and a space for them to practice riding. That's it.
That's
Did you do any costings on the proposals?
We haven't done specific costings for a lot of it, but these concrete blocks, they're from a previous year's work, and they come out they use the leftover concrete from building sites at the end of the day. They put it into the formwork, and it comes out at $50 per block, and they're big blocks. We're proposing, and some of them have already been implemented in this camp, but we're proposing that they look quite sort of utilitarian, so maybe having a few different shapes is a bit more playful. They're really big, so we're proposing filling it up not all the way so that they can be used as seating and having them in a more friendly formation.
While we didn't cost per se, I think the way we approach problems is not solving one problem at a time, but sort of combining a multitude of problems into one and sort of solving it that way. So the efficiency improves, and therefore hoping that cost eventually comes down.
Are there any other questions? Because I'm thinking that maybe we should move through. I mean, a brilliant piece of work, and beautifully presented as well. But we might move on to the next project because there's a few people hanging about. So maybe we will do that, which I think is the next one. Okay. Is it Pete or Von? Pete.
My name is Bonanto. These are my group members, Pete and Andrew. So I'll just start off. So our campsite was Niwonta Trucking Yards, and to just give a bit of a brief about the camp, it is a very vibrant and developed camp, and they have a very successful basketball team and a lot of sports teams as well. And we sort of went there and spoke with Will. Thanks for coming, Will. Will, Tyrone, Lazarus, and John, the president of the camp. And so our project was quite different from the rest of the project because it was mostly focused towards the men in the community, and really to create a safe space that men could call their own and feel protected and safe.
Sheltered.
Yeah, and just for a place to have a conversation in, really. So the men in the community really wanted to have a private space where they could just talk. That's what Will did mention. So we primarily started looking at what their needs really are, and we concluded upon the multiple discussions that they would like a highly flexible space for a safe gathering, and that would include a recreation space, a workshop or training/educational space, so they could share their skills that the men already have in the camp, and sort of like a private space as well with toilets and kitchenettes in all those areas. So we wanted to design a space that would sort of blend in all those things in one area, and as well answering the sort of regulations as well of the site. Do you want to continue with the site analysis?
So we had quite a good brief to run on. These guys really knew what they wanted. They were great to deal with. So we had an idea of how to get a large space, but we had to balance it with the budget. And so the site area is fairly large, and we started off thinking about where the best place to place this shed would be. because this is a place where, you know, people want to feel comfortable, they want to be happy, having conversations, meeting space. So this is a site here, this little model, and there was a few main factors that we looked at. One was the sidelines. So we wanted to make sure there was a little bit of sight out to the street, which you can see in the window at the front of this model here, but also sight out the back. And by locating the shed to the boundary, the neighbouring fence, we fully maximised this outdoor area, which was actually presented by you guys an idea. So we really wanted to maximise this space and this great view out to the surrounding landscape. So that was also beneficial too because of the north, the sun, make sure it's nice and warm in the winter. And that led us on to how to also control the sun in summer. So as you can see the form here, we wanted to do something as budget in mind while starting with the basis of a shed, so these walls here, but adding something a bit extra on. So by using this roof, which is actually peaked up, trying to bring some of this warm air, the cool air from the ground and actually bring it up through the top, keeping it cool in summer. And these possibly Perspex windows that we thought they could bring all this light in. So it'll be a nice open space, you're not using too much light, saving electricity costs, things like that. Yeah. So that's basically how we orientated the building.
I'll have a crack. And so one of the complexities and the interesting parts that differentiates this project with some of the other more mapping projects is that it's just it's a building on a site. And one of the differences is that these guys wanted so many different spaces and activities in one shed, really. And the exercise was to say, all right, how many activities do you want? And what do you want, and how can they interweave and interlock with each other? And so, like, how can a workshop space double as a gym or a large room all the blokes can watch a game in? And all of that was arranged in kind of all of these different exercises to say, I know, you can fit a car in there, a Land Cruiser, troop carrier, but also have a couple of guys over it tucked away in the corner, maybe having a bit of a quiet chat. And it's just a safe space where they can do whatever they want and be away from the community if they wanted to, but still have a nice connection to the community. So yeah, and we did go through into, how this is going to be built. The nature of these projects is that budgets are usually quite tight, so we wanted to make it practical to build. And one of what Bon kind of mentioned before was the skills that the guys have. So we wanted to make use of the construction materials and the construction skills that these guys have, like Will and Lazarus and Anthony and Tyrone and John as well. So landscaping, boiler making, carpentry, how can these guys build it themselves? So we can design it to be an efficient use of material for them to build it easily and in their own time. So yeah.
Yeah, and the space at the front as well. It's situated in a grid as well, so that there is opportunity for future expansion. So it's really just a beginning of the space. There's so much more you can do with the space in the future.
Yeah. So being so flexible and things, obviously this is open to what people are wanting to do on that day. So all these drawings and things, these are just our testings of what fits and our almost not suggestions, but our studies of how the space can and might be used. And so in forming some of this landscape, we were thinking there's this existing roadway down here because the site is situated just near a floodplain. So there's this existing roadway that goes up here, and we thought we might utilise that, possibly put some rocks in here so people aren't driving right through this space here where we were thinking possibly a fire could go. And veggie garden was mentioned. So by putting these rocks here, we thought that could sort of keep that away for the cars. They could actually drive around through and you could either go into this space here or into these doors. They could be opened up, keep it nice and fresh and bright, or they could be closed down. People could sort of retreat to the side if it was a bit more of an informal, quiet chat, or even if it was a formal chat, you get social workers or counsellors in, things like that. We suggested the possibility of using these partition walls, rolling walls that could easily sort of divide a space if required, but they're not set. So, yeah, ultimate flexibility basically. This little substructure at the back was the potential of having a toilet and a store. The store was quite an important thing, seeming as they've got so much sport happening and music. We wanted to, that was a big requirement. So we thought, or they actually suggested having it outside so you don't have to go through. If there's something happening, you don't have to disturb anyone. You can actually just park and walk and get something, come back. But being on a budget, we did contact some local shed dealers, and that's part of the point of having this as corrugated shed at the bottom, is you can keep that quite cheap, so therefore you could possibly have this toilet. But if that is over the budget, you could always put the plumbing in, and as these guys have the skills, put it in later once there's a bit more of a budget. Yeah, so there's a bit of a plan underneath too. So yeah, being just as open as possible, all this veranda space can be used. If you get a bit more time after, you can see some of the, how much you can fit, people playing cards, all sorts of things. Or build your own shed.
So there's a bit of an exercise we got here, and you can arrange your own shed space. So throw a TV up the back room, you got 20 people in there, vice versa. Yeah, just have a bit of fun with it. That's what we really wanted to do. So yeah, thank you.
Are there any questions?
Just, you're talking a little bit about costings and who's going to build it. Have you done like a costing sheet of, or, you know, kind of a little bit more into the technicalities of that work, or has that not come through yet?
So like actual reports that you think?
Yeah, just as like if we were going to develop a funding submission for it, I guess it's just to have a sense of where you guys are up to.
You know, we were at the beginnings of getting the construction handbook, and it's got, you know, price per square metre of things, and we're like, all right, ballpark figures of all these kind of things. So, yeah, like
we sort of kept the. Sorry, I don't want to.
Oh no, that's right. We did contact a few manufacturers. They just want to see drawings for a quote. You're sort of trying to get a bit of a ballpark figure, but they want something set in stone. And given the sort of time frame of this, and we, being it's still in sort of a concept stage, it's until you sort of agree on the space, and then you can get it more formally priced. Yeah. So we had it as a beginning look, and we always designed with budget in mind. But the next step would be getting it more formally priced up, which we'd be fairly confident in.
Yeah, we're quite confident in the spatial arrangement and the area accommodation. Yeah. That would fit, that would meet
and
funding application.
Sorry, and having a few things that, if they are over, could drop off. Say this bathroom here, which could be the slab poured and then later on be built up.
It wouldn't affect the success of the overall building. So if you peel back layers during construction, because all things generally do fall away, it's not going to affect the overall success of the spatial arrangement and security, privacy, and light ventilation. So, yeah.
I have one other question. Sorry. You talked a little bit about having cool breezes coming through in the perspex and the winter side, but not so much about the summer and the mitigation of heat, which is, of course, probably the bigger factor here in the centre. So I was just wondering what kind of features in that regard that you wove into the design.
Probably the masonry wall.
It's quite interchangeable. Some of the clear story, like the highlight panels up here. It's lightweight construction, so that can be interchanged if you want. It's at a highlight level, so it's away from people maybe trying to break in or jump over. That can be interchanged with louver windows or sliding windows. It's Yeah, so like we had a lot of concepts and ideas about having like kind of large sliding doors. That leads to other issues about security and vision. So at the moment we just considered light and keeping the heat in. And at the end, at a later stage, we can consider the specifics of how wide a louver window can actually fit in there. Because at the moment the clear stories, that's perfect for a nice louver window or something that you can shut down quite easily just with a lever.
Being that it comes to a high point, we're hoping that the heat rises up through the building, so trying to get some of that cool breeze through. And being that north's this way, so this west sun, there's this big awning right over, so hopefully that's far enough away that you're not getting too much direct sun actually on the living space. It's more in the storage space.
No, it's a great idea. Like you were saying before with our basketball program, all of that, we all start off small. We utilise our skills and that the basketball program's actually growing now. We've started off small and now we've got people from elsewhere and funding agencies and people want to get on board because our program's somewhat of had been a success. So yeah, that's why we talked about the flexibility. In our town camp we've got a lot of skilled people that lives on there. We've got builders, carpenters, school teachers, or family members of that, mechanics and all that sort of stuff. So that's why we wanted that flexibility so we can run those programs throughout that. So, one time we might have something to do with mechanics. Next time there might be an idea with, landscaping and all that sort of stuff. So there's flexibility there. We also wanted an open space that these guys have, done for us because we want also, balancing the both worlds, the cultural world, but also the Western world in regards to working and all that sort of stuff, but keeping our culture there, so having that space there, so when we go out hunting, we can bring it back and show the young ones, the right way to cut up, but also feeding our other family members on the town camp. So it's all about flexibility and starting small, and like we said before with the basketball program, who knows where it can go. So yeah, it's great. So yeah, thanks.
I think we're ready for the next camp, which is Old Timers. And who's speaking first? Jack.
Hi, my name is Jack. This is Alex and Callum, and we were working alongside Robert and looking at Ilperingho, Old Timers, and more specifically looking at the edges and community safety and how can we make a secure camp. So the way we were approaching it was, thanks to Robert, we went around the whole site and we started photographing and documenting the issues or concerns that we had within, and how through the documentation we started to then sketch out and figure out solutions of what is a fence, how can we play what a fence can be, and the layering within that. So I think we might start, we'll just go through the numbers. So the first phase was looking at the entryway. Now, at the entry, there was issues with too solid fencing and you couldn't have any visibility down the Stuart Highway. So it's how can we start changing that fence and cutting away those solid fence panels and cutting it in so you can get clear views down towards the south of the highway. So we started looking at that and then having low-lying landscape and rocking to have an inviting entry. And number two?
Yeah, sure. So, like Jack mentioned, security was probably the biggest issue and probably the most pressing issue at Ilperingho. So the way we've sort of approached our strategy was sort of to have a short and longer term solution. So something that can happen maybe tomorrow or quite quickly and can be quite cost effective, and then a solution that can kind of evolve from that and make the camp a better place overall. So another key issue was this fence. Fences were a big part of our project, and there's a major frontage along the Stuart Highway, and that's currently just this sort of just the typical ColourBond solid fencing. So it gives a bit of privacy, but there are issues with not being able to see through the fence and see what's on the other side. and it's also kind of spanning longer than it should, so the lengths of the fence and the placings of the posts don't quite work structurally. So in the short term, we thought that we'd raise up the posts and extend them to lift up the solid fencing and put something like this, some kind of grid mesh in the lower part of the fence, so you can see people walking underneath, and that improves the security along that fence a little bit, but still allows for some privacy. And then in the long term, we've come up with some strategies for how to approach keeping that existing structure with the fence that have extended posts and the grid below. What can we do to replace that solid colour bond that's not quite working structurally and also visually? And with this being such a major highway, we saw this as an opportunity to perhaps engage with the community, maybe local artists, and potentially get a grant that could be funded by someone like the Department of Infrastructure, who are in charge of the Stuart Highway, to improve that interface and create an artwork that provides security, creates a better sort of sense of identity for the community, but also improves that really long stretch of road for people going down there, walking or driving. So we had three sort of options for that are based on costing. So you could have quite a cost-effective approach using the same kind of grid mesh that you extend up and have some kind of woven material through it, so creating moments where you can see through it or it's quite solid. And then another option is having a kind of combination of solid and mesh materials to create an artwork. So we've got a drawing here that sort of illustrates what that might look like. And then another maybe pricier option could be a perforated screen that is laser cut perhaps in some kind of artwork, and you've got these moments where from far away it becomes quite transparent, and up close it's quite solid, and that can be quite interesting with lighting at different times of day and night as well.
So along the southeast, so along the southern boundary and the eastern boundary, a mountain comes down onto the site, and at the moment there's no fencing there. And what the issue is there's damage to this corner down here. And currently there's bollards and rocks, but they're still accessed by people and by vehicles. So we need to try to find a way to extend the fence all the way up. So we've joined the fence from the south all the way up to the east, to the northwest corner. But instead of just putting a fence and letting that opportunity where people might jump over or might find ways to get through, is making a succession or a buffer. So using landscaping and rocks and placing that through. So by changing the ground level and digging it down just along the fence line, and planting prickly shrubs and low-lying dense shrubbery, which are specific plant species like acacias and grevilleas. It allows then the difficulty to get through and beyond to the fence. So we started addressing that, and these sketches visually show that.
Yeah, so what we did was we just moved the fence slightly backwards where it was existing and then extended it, but we allowed a metre or so of planting to allow for planting along the hill. So sort of shifted that boundary a little bit, but kept it within their boundary for the planting and landscaping.
Yeah, and up here against the northern edge, we've got the Todd River up here. And right now, this is completely accessible, but right next door is Fort Knox in the Old Timers retiree home. And so we had this cheeky idea where we thought we'd kind of use the exact same fence and do it kind of on the cheap, just do this little section. It'll give the illusion that we're part of the same compound. And then that was actually, experience, brings these ideas. So we're kind of, the kind of first order of operations, create safety. Now we can kind of think about what kind of place this can be to live, and what can we as architects do for community to just make life in this place really lovely. So we talked about a community centre. Originally I was, thinking, Robert, we'll put the community centre up here, it looks to the river, every few years you can go for a swim. But he was like, no, it's actually a crap spot because people are driving around here, it's not safe for the kids, so okay, where else is good? And he said, down here. And this was a bit of a problem spot because right now we've got unwanted camping happening down there. And part of the way that we can deal with design to make places safer is human eyes, passive surveillance. So by actually putting a building into the problem spot, it kind of helps to resolve that issue. So looking at what we can do here, pretty much every time we talked about what kind of building they want, it's just about having a big hat, keep the sun off. And so this has got a big hat. This is the model here, and you can see that what we've done is you approach here from the north, come through, and this is a big kind of open space. Barbecue here, and then on those really hot days you can come inside to this mixed use and kitchen space, and that kind of opens on a big nice door. You got the office room for people taking care of the centre, and then you got the computer room up the back. And the office kind of situated between the kitchen and the computer gives a little bit of kind of eyes on, so no one who doesn't belong to the centre can kind of come in and muck around. So there's a bit of privacy there. And then we thought, actually what would be best is if we've got the community centre up the back, that's where the kids should be, because there's no point in having them where they are here. So the long-term kind of solution would be to bring the playground kind of just here to the back of the community centre, and actually bring the fence such that if any kid wants to kind of run out, they've got to do so by passing through all the aunties. So, you'll be able to grab them, send them back in. And because this spot here, which is a bit of a natural centre, doesn't have the playground anymore, we thought about making a meeting place. Well, we didn't think about it, Rob thought about it. And we said, that's a good idea. And so, and so just essentially, they almost don't need architecture to have a meeting, but they do so and they get hot. So all this really is again, it's just a hat, and it just formalizes sitting around, having a yarn, talking about it day to day, but also if bigger groups come, you've got a kind of a natural circle, which is kind of the way that, we here are talking and people just naturally form. And then you've got seating and you can stand kind of behind and it would tier, so everybody can have their eyes on the person in the middle, or you're just sitting in the shade, somewhere cool, having a yarn. So yeah, that's our project, and thanks very much for coming. Thanks again for coming and for all the help. Yeah. Cheers.
General comment. You can sort of see there's a kind of pattern that's clearly emerging from all these projects, which is using, the kind of more familiar security measures like fencing and things like that, but also leveraging built infrastructure like community centers to also create community safety. So by, making a place active, by inviting people in, it's the people that are there who can see what's going on. That's what makes a safe space. It's not the fence, it's not the lights. All that stuff helps to contribute and support that, but having active areas is critical, and you can see that certainly with the Carter proposal and the bus stop and the men's shed. Certainly with this one, and as you'll see, I suspect down at Unduppa later, is kind of using all these different kinds of strategies, and I find them amazingly effective in these great little moves you've made with, with moving the fence and playing with landscape is, is quite innovative, I think, and great. It's good.
look, when we're talking about looking in the future, that's what it should look like. And just looking at that there, I'd like to thank these young people and Tangentyere and everybody that came today. Just looking at that there, I was just telling Michael, I feel safe just looking at it. But look, nothing happened yet, okay? But that, when we want to make a plan and go to the government, that's it. That's our plan. And I want to thank everybody for it. Okay?
We might continue to present the works. And this is the Andapa camp, and it's split into two camps, if you like, or two bodies of work. One the mapping, and one predominantly around the community centre. But I think it's the mappers who are going first. Alex and Amber.
Hello, we're Alex and Amber. We've been looking at Andapa camp. We were lucky enough to, be invited into this community and get to talk to community members firsthand and hear from them their concerns regarding safety and issues that, is impacting their lives in something that's should be a right for everyone to feel safe in their home and their community. So we were lucky enough to talk to the members such as Rosemary, Riedel, and we also talked to Nancy and heard from them firsthand about what their concerns were regarding the community. So we're going to look at, we have 6 main points that we're addressing in our proposal. So that's about the direction of cars, how to calm traffic, keeping children safe, providing a gathering and shelter space, combat flooding, and also tidying up the camp.
Okay. So to get your bearings a little bit, this is Hunter Road and Stuart Highway, a little bit over there. And Hunter Camp is to the south. So the first main issue from our meeting was that there were no sort of barriers to stop cars from coming onto their public space. And we think part of the reason for this was that the lot size is so large and it's such a large open area that there's so many different openings for the cars to get on. And if you look at the map, you can see all these different tracks that the cars have cut through their public space. And they were concerned that they couldn't inhabit this public space and feel safe, and that their kids couldn't be in the playgrounds in these public spaces without feeling safe either. So we started to look at the different ways of blocking cars. So an external perimeter, and we looked at all these different types of barriers. So the community said that they wanted steel bollards everywhere, but when we sort of measured up this distance that we needed to block off, it was a little bit more than half a kilometre, and just getting quick materials costs for steel bollards was pretty excessive. So we started to look at different waste products or recycled products. So we started to look at tyres with rammed earth. We also took lead from previous years and looked at the same concrete block solution. And we also called up the tip in Alice Springs and found out that they had this steel that we could recycle to create steel bollards at a much lower price, but also that they're excavating, and we could use some of the quarried stone to create a new set of barriers. So what we've proposed is just a combination of these different solutions to stop cars, which will kind of be based on the different costs and the different grants that's allowed for the site. The next point was that the cars are coming from the outside in, but they're also flying around the road on the inside, and that they felt unsafe just accessing this public space. So when we had a look around and the process of mapping, we started to think, well, firstly, what these streetlights were doing at night time, and they started to point out that a lot of them were broken, presumably by slingshots from the kids. We started to think that we could use this existing infrastructure and add on a safe crossing. So it would be a speed hump but combined with an accessible pathway at every single street light. So at every single one of these lights, there's a safe crossing to get from your house into the public space of the park. Yeah.
The next issue we talked about was keeping children safe in the park. So this park is already existing, and the kids have made this pretty amazing BMX track. And there was concerns about keeping the children in, keeping dogs out, and also keeping cars out. So the community wanted a fence, one that they could see through to maintain visual surveillance of their children. So we've put that in. Also, we've sort of made use of this rammed tyre walls inside, and they offer little, it's sort of like something you can play on but also hide and sort of play with your friends and look out. And a note on the rammed tyres, we called up some places in Alice Springs and we got in contact with a tyre place that was willing to donate their used tyres for free and actually come to communities and deliver those. So that's completely free of charge. And there's about 50 million tyres a year in Australia that go to landfills. So that's a really good option, and using soil from site and also getting people engaged that are doing CDP to actually fill those themselves. And it doesn't require a lot of skills or much training to be able to do that. And it's a very effective method at, bless you. So we thought that was a really, really good option to be really affordable and also getting people involved in that process as well. The next thing we started to look at was providing a gathering and a shelter space. There was already an existing shelter space here, and when you get a chance you can look at the photos, and it was quite derelict, but they did like the idea of it. So we proposed to reinstate another one in the same spot and also a larger one on this existing slab. So utilising that slab that was already there and introducing some services like water. They wanted to be able to prepare roux and cook that there. So we have a hearth here, a large roof, a kitchen sink, a big bench, and also a hose connection just to be able to maintain and easily hose off that area for cleanliness. Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
So the idea, this is the the little model of the structure, and the idea was just to use a very simple steel framed shed, and they'll provide shade during summer, during the middle of the day. But then we also have vertical louvers to the northwest to stop the afternoon sun from hitting. Then we combine this sort of simple steel structure with landscaping. So a large berm to the south and southeast, and that bounces the cold air over the top. So you kind of create this nice sheltered space underneath the roof. Then also a really nice outdoor space around which you can kind of sit on the berm. There's a campfire. So just kind of these simple, cost-effective strategies just to create very usable outdoor space that people can gather on. So one of the next points was one of the byproducts of the fact that the cars are going all over people's front yards and everywhere was that the ground had depressed in parts, and it was causing all this flooding to the front of people's houses. So we started to look at that and see, if we could kind of turn this into our own advantage. And the idea we came up with was maybe it's a good thing, considering the dry climate, that water is pooling up somewhere where it rains. So maybe we can start to reshape this public space and reshape it into a central drainage channel. And then the fact that it floods there could, create all these really nice landscaped areas, to create all these sort of informal seating spots. So the idea was just to reshape the contours of the land and to drain the water away to new plantings and berms, and then to also water the existing trees. So we kind of work hand in hand with these barriers. So there'd be these nice little meeting spots around these areas where there's big healthy trees growing and different pathways that you can walk. We've tried to control where cars could go in this public space, and we've proposed to stabilise the ground through like a plastic mesh infilled with gravel as just a cost-effective solution just to stabilise the ground and make sure that the same problem doesn't repeat itself.
And we also sort of decided to do that here next to Rosemary's house, and she was really keen on the idea of citrus trees. So if we could do that, that would be really amazing for her to sort of maintain and hang out there. The last issue that we noticed was the camp had quite a lot of bits and pieces left over, services, things like that, ruins and the like. So we sort of took some photographic evidence of all these things. There was an existing playground that was sort of a bit derelict now and it's a little bit dangerous. So just removing all of that and tidying it up. And there's the opportunity here as well to use some of this demolition such as slab and rock, and you can actually use those as well inside the rammed tyre walls. So that's a good opportunity, sort of, instead of having to just throw something out, reusing that again on site.
And a last point, just kind of riding off the Canter camp was, oh sorry, with all their great work with the bus shelter, our camp isn't serviced by any public transport. So the bus runs up this road, and we've proposed the same bus structure, which will kind of work together with all the different camps to create this, this kind of uniform public infrastructure. The one thing to note about our master plan is that the boundary actually cuts on to Canter Road here. So part of the argument is that we've got to allow for road widening down here, so that the bus isn't coming onto the town camp's land. But yeah.
And just one more thing about the community, it was something that we noticed quite early on is just that there was a really strong sense of community, and it wasn't just like the adults coming to talk to us, the kids were really excited as well, and I don't know if that was because of the oranges and the biscuits, but anyway, they were really excited to give us their point of view on certain things as well that maybe the adults hadn't noted. So it'd be really good to give back to this community and actually, capitalise on the opportunities here and make this a bit of a nicer, safer place for them to enjoy. Yep, that's it.
Thank you. Okay, well we might move on to the community centre, which of course is part of the camp.
So my name's Angela and I've been working with Eloise and Hannah on the community centre, which is a project within the overall Ndapa community site. And the community centre is located just down the bottom here. We've been working with the existing church site and the community consultations, and they've expressed that they would like to repurpose and redesign that into a community centre. And we have addressed some of the issues and some of the assets that come along with this site. So this comes with the security as well, which has been a big part of it, at the back of the site and along the sides of it, as well as within the materials used on the building as well. But overall, it was a really good site to work with. We have like north-east alignment, so that's going to bring in a lot of good lighting and sun. And it's also a really good slab and existing structure that we can reuse. And we also have a really strong community support to get this up and running again. In the past, it's been a church and an education centre, so we've tried to keep it flexible for reuse of the space in the future as well. But the main spaces that they were looking for include a meeting space, somewhere for a range of activities, which we can try and do with a flexible open space within the building, and a kitchen and a laundry, and potentially some showers and toilets at the back of the site as well.
So I guess our initial approach was to look at master planning the existing site. It was really quite an interesting place for a public building because it's actually situated between two private residential lots. And it's south facing, it's rear facing fence faces onto the big open expanse, which at this point, which then leads into Canter Camp. And they were experiencing problems with people coming over the back fence, accessing the site, and not being able to passively survey, who was entering and who was maybe potentially doing damage or causing grief in this place. So our strategy, one of our biggest strategies was to consider the accessibility of the site and to make sure that not only the building but also the landscape elements could be reached by someone who was potentially in a walking frame or in a wheelchair. The first thing that we addressed, though, was to look at a replacement roof and water harvesting and water retention on the site. It's a very arid and dry climate. It's very hot here. And so to retain water and promote vegetation growth is one of our biggest priorities. You can collect water and keep it not in tanks because it's not quite enough water to justify that expenditure, but to rather keep it and direct it into rain gardens. And that allows you to invest in particular vegetation types, which will add amenity to the climatic conditions of the interior of the space. By having adequate shade on the building, it's reducing air conditioning and ancillary climatic control costs for the building. The second thing we tried to facilitate here was to have a lot of informal outdoor gathering spaces. So it's a really, at times, very inhospitable environment to be outside here, but if we can properly and adequately revegetate this site, it provides opportunities for people to gather informally and inexpensively outside. And so providing spaces for a yarn or for a meal, to perhaps work together, do art together, and to teach or play was really important to facilitate here. Another big part of our brief when talking to our community was that they have a lot of visitors coming onto site for various reasons, and that they would have liked a place for visitors to come and wash clothes but also dry clothes. And a lot of the private residences don't have washing lines where they can do that. Or they will hang clothes through the chainmail fencing. But the problem with that is then the clothes will fall to the ground, they get dirty, they're not clean to put back on the skin. So to have a washing line that's both accessible but also on a concrete slab that can be hosed down and kept clean was a big priority. It was identified that a lot of women will be using the community centre primarily, seems to be the trend. And so with that comes the need to have a safe place for young children to play. So Andapa Camp already have a playground on site that's really sort of suited to kids 5 years and above, and a BMX track that's all ages. But we needed to supply a place that would, keep little kids entertained and safe and in proximity to their parents, so that parents inside who are cooking or in the computer rooms could then be able to either see out or be outside with them. And so a really beautiful, interactive and sensory play space was quite, there's a potential for the site. It's quite a large site and it's sort of fenced well, so it's a safe place for kids to stay. Other than outdoor community gathering like on the verandas, we wanted to provide space for lighting a fire, cooking rutail, informal shelters. So taking the model again sort of carried along with the Kunta Camp and Andapa greater shade area, that there's a continued thematic or a more of an architectural intervention where you have this sense of beauty and homecoming in the space and not just utility. But if there is a potential to elevate the spaces where people are spending their time, it creates a sense of self-value or value in their community. The vegetation strategy is a tricky one. It's a very hot and arid and dry environment. So I guess integral to the redesign of the roof was to try and capture as much vegetation as possible. And the last and probably the biggest thing that ties this project together was security and the community's concern with people accessing the site. I think one thing that all of our groups today experienced with our consultation was that people just wanted big fences to keep bad people out from their space that they valued and they loved. And we really wanted to challenge that. But at the end of the day, people who live there, they really do know what's best for their space. But at the same time, we wanted to challenge how that can be done and how that can be done in a way that maintains a sense of homecoming and hospitality and openness, which comes with a community centre. So we've proposed a 2.4 metre high fence at the rear of the site, which provides security coming over from the south from Kunta Camp. And that continues down both residential lots, and then that phases then into, which you can see in the model, back down to the pre-existing chain link fence, which returns to, that more residential scale. So what that does is if people are coming from the south of the site, they're encouraged not to go over the back fence, but to come around to the front, where at least if they are wanting to come into the site, it can be seen, and the local residents who live here can really see who's accessing the place and can sort of control who's coming and going. And we really hope that that will help mitigate some of the, I guess, disrepair that occurred on site in the past.
As Andy mentioned, the existing building has great assets in that it's got a great concrete slab, it's got block walls, and it's also got a steel portal that can all be reused and tied into the new structure. And as Hannah mentioned, the roof is probably the kind of main thing that really needs to be replaced. It's causing structural damage at the moment, so we're proposing a new roof and new verandas that wrap right around to facilitate those gathering areas and have a nice place to sit and just have a chat, but also in the summer be able to essentially sit in the sun with the sun coming down low, but also be shaded in the winter, sit in the sun, but in the summer be shaded. So we also looked at just getting some good ventilation through the space and up and out of the roof. And to also really relocate the main large multi-purpose space for this community centre to the northeast of the building, so that has better climate control, essentially more solar access and more exposure to the sun in winter. So we created a large flexible open plan space, which you can see, sorry David, on this drawing here. Which allows kind of a gathering of people between kind of Rosemary and Reedle expressed a space that could kind of cater for 15 to 20 people, but it can be used in a series of ways, kind of a gathering table, maybe some people working on art or kids on a rug, reading books, so a really flexible space that had access and sight lines out to the main public spaces in the road, and also that you can flow out onto these verandas and they really become an outdoor room as well. The next thing that they raised as a concern, or they really wanted to get the kitchen up and running again and have a space for women cooking and a pantry off the back that's lockable that has a fridge, freezer and stove and adequate storage. The next one we kind of discussed was a laundry. So just at the back here we've got a laundry, so family members and visitors can wash clothes and bedding at the back here, and as Hannah expressed, a washing line kind of in here which is easily accessible and allows kind of that function in proximity to the kids playing alongside. And then they kind of expressed really, I guess, wanted a quieter, kind of smaller room which we thought could be carpeted and somewhat flexible as well. So on the left-hand side we've got a computer room which is a smaller space, and then also a private meeting space which has a door coming kind of off the main space but also access externally so people can come and go and have private meetings there, and just a gathering of maybe 3 to 4 people. These are highlight windows, so it provides privacy and somewhat secure. And these verandas wrap the whole way around the site and lead back into these accessible facilities at the back, which include toilets and showers. And also there's a secure cupboard here which they can lock up kind of equipment and also cleaning products and things. We've also allowed for air conditioning and heating, and but all in all we wanted to provide kind of a really nice large multi-flexible space and revive this community centre, which, you know, it has great bones and it wouldn't take much to kind of get it off the ground again and functioning for the Unduppa community. So thank you.
Are there any questions for the community centre?
This is a great project because it's working at a couple of different scales, and what I really like about both the work that's done at this really broad scale and that at the kind of really small, kind of human micro scale, is that the same intensity of detail and thinking has gone into each one. So you've sort of treated the community center as this big world, you know, which has this real intense kind of focus on it. In the same way this does. I mean, I love this this sort of landscape approach with trying to deal with that terrible sort of, you know, dirt and mud flat out there. This is something that nobody's ever thought of or considered before, but it's got that same kind of like that just real focus on, you know, issues that you've seen on site and how they can be resolved, and it all sort of ties together beautifully. So it's a great tribute, I think, to you, to all of the groups, you know, to sort of see this working at multiple scales on different things, but still bringing that rigor to everything. It's really fantastic.
You know, I can't say enough about David and Andrew and your support for us. It's an amazing opportunity that you've provided us for now 4 years. And the work that's on the walls, I mean, I'll get to the students kind of soon, but it's actually facilitated by you guys. And your commitment to this area and to these town camps and to these people inspires us, you know, and the amount of knowledge that you bring to what you talk about, the knowledge that you have about this place and about these places is staggering. And so I really can't say enough. And I do realise that next year will be different in some way, and I don't know, you know, how we'll actually kind of fill that void. But hopefully we'll work out a way. But thank you, you know. And I don't want to leave anyone out, but I want to isolate you fellas, obviously. The other thing is, you know, this working with this group of students, I'm going to get emotional actually, because it's such a pleasure working with people who have absolute commitment to what they're actually doing. And each year, I hasten, there is a real commitment by the students that we bring here. And as someone who, I suppose, represents that student body, it's completely thrilling. It's life-assuring. It makes me very optimistic about the future. So it's an absolute privilege. And thank you for the way that you not only took to your task, the way that you talked to people that we came across from different backgrounds, to the way that you worked together in teams, to the way that not many of you slept last night, to the way that, you know, there's a real effortless quality to the way that you simply do what you need to do. So thank you very, very much. It's been a great work. Thank you. So here endeth the sermon, our 14 days or 10, 12 days in this wonderful place. So we will be exhibiting this work back in Newcastle, and hopefully, and I've been assured in different ways that this work that we're looking at will have a life as well. So I think that's a real outcome, and again, fantastic news. Thank you.